Hello and welcome to Deep Blue Sea, the podcast. I'm your host, Jay Cluett. Once again, I am hosting solo. Mark Hoffmeyer, regular co-host, is on paternity leave. Normally on this show we would be analysing a chapter of the Deep Blue Sea franchise, all three of them. We've done all of those, so we're now looking at Deep Blue Sea adjacent films with the same director or themes or sharks, which I am unfamiliar with. And this week we are finishing off the big guns. We're finishing off the Jaws franchise. If you're expecting this show last week, apologies, we had some scheduling issues. So we filled in with 12 rounds, the Rennie Holland film. So we're finishing off with Jaws, The Revenge, or Jaws 4, or Jaws 4, The Revenge, depending on the release. What is Jaws 4, The Revenge? Well, it's the fourth Jaws film. It came out in 1987. It was directed by Joseph Sargent, and it stars Lorraine Gary, returning as Ellen Brody from the first two films. She is still living on Amity Island when her youngest son, Sean, who has become a police deputy, is killed by a shark. Ellen believes this to be an act of vengeance, a murder, if you will, of the shark, laying a trap and waiting for Sean. More on that later. So when her oldest son, Michael, played by Lance Guest, comes to visit, he suggests Ellen return with him to the Bahamas, where he is working on a aquatic-based doctorate of some kind. So Ellen does so, but what do you know? There's a shark there too. Is it the same shark? Maybe. Who knows? We'll see. And hilarity ensues. So I need somebody who was willing to talk about Jaws the Revenge with me, which was a difficult slot to fill in terms of a podcast guest, but I'm thrilled with the guest who relented and said, fine, I'll do it. So joining from the Forgotten Filmcast, returning to the show, is Todd Lebanon. Todd, welcome back to the show.
Jay, after this, I have to say it's personal now. I mean, come on.
Todd Lebanon, The Revenge. Yes, this is, I would say, easily the worst reviewed film we've covered so far. It has a 3.0 on IMDb. It's often talked about as one of the worst films ever made, although on last week's show, Aaron said it was better than Jaws 3, which is...
Yeah.
I disagree. But hey,
I figured you would, because Jaws 3 has Dennis Quaid in it, and I know how Jay feels about Dennis Quaid.
Well, I'm not a fan. Well, but he doesn't get eaten in Jaws 3. No,
if I had thought about it more, I should have, tried to get in for Jaws 3, because not only does Jaws 3 have Dennis Quaid, which I could take it or leave it, but Leah Thompson is in Jaws 3, which I'd watch Leah Thompson organize her sock drawer. So, come on.
Well, I was almost disappointed her character did not return, because Sean has a girlfriend or a would-be fiancée in this film. But all of the actors have changed. This film, basically, Jaws the Revenge, dismisses Jaws 3 and maybe even Jaws 2. Nothing from those films is mentioned. This is just a straight sequel to Jaws. But before we get further into this one, what's your history with the Jaws franchise, Todd? What do you feel about the films up to this point?
I love the first film. I mean, of course, it's brilliant. It's the grandfather of all blockbusters. So I'll gladly watch the first film anytime. The second film is better than a lot of people think it is. It's a far cry from the first, but I think there's still a lot of interesting moments about the second film. The third film is just you'll laugh at the goofy 3D effects and and Jaws
the out of focus scenes, scenes.
And we'll get into Jaws the Revenge, but let's put it this way: I watched it once upon a time and never felt the need to return to it until Jay came a calling. So
did you watch this on its release, or was that, were you too young?
I did not. No, I didn't see it in the theater. I mean, 87 was a packed year. I mean, we've talked about this before. I think back. We did a Lambcast movie draft of 87 films.
It is one of the best years for all cinema.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to the 80s, I'm partial to 84 first and foremost, but 87 is probably coming in second or third because there's a lot of great movies that came out that summer.
Predator, Princess Bride, RoboCop, some fantastic films that year, and of course, Jaws: The Revenge. And I think was the Chipmunk Adventure that year as well. For some reason, is pinging in my brain. I don't know. Former Lambcast Movie of the Month. Yes, it was. Which actually your co-host Kristen from Walt sent me. That was her film that she put forward. So
that's correct.
That's why it's pinging in my brain. Chipmunk Adventure is terrible. It's not a good film to watch for the first time at age 32, I think. So actually, speaking of watching films for the first time, this was my first time watching Jaws: The Revenge. And going in, I went in this a little unfairly, because I watched this on a Thursday evening, having worked a full day of work. I started watching it at 10:15 p.m. on a Thursday evening after a full day of work, on a day where the night before I'd already got 4.5 hours sleep. I'd run 15 kilometers that day, done 2 dog walks, and had a big heavy dinner. So this was going to be an uphill struggle for any film. But yeah, so this was a bit of a slog to get through, and this was more like Jaws: The Resent halfway through. I didn't enjoy watching this. I didn't want to watch it.
There are a lot of extended moments of this film where nothing happens. Well, it's just kind of drags along.
Yeah, in preparation for today's show, I did kind of watch it through again, and there were whole scenes that I didn't remember from the first time around. So when Michael was underwater and he's just trying to escape the shark and he's doing a lot of swimming, I think I just kind of drifted off for that whole 5-minute segment of the film. So yeah, so I'm going to try and be as positive as I can for this. That's what we'd like to do with this segment of the show, is this season of the show, is I try and find people who are fans of the film to come on and introduce me to it, which I was not able to find a fan of Jaws: The Revenge. Although, saying that, regular co-host Mark, back on episode 1 of Deep Blue Sea, the podcast, he said that Jaws: The Revenge was his favourite flick, because he, of course, has the Movies, Films and Flicks podcast and website. So Jaws is his favourite film, Deep Blue Sea is his favourite movie, but Jaws: The Revenge is his favourite flick. Which I asked him why. Okay. I watched the film and then I just sent a message saying why? Why? Just what? Saying, what are you talking about? And the reasoning behind it was, I'm just trying to call up the message that he sent me, was that he loves that the shark sets a trap to kill one of the Brodies in the beginning, and the shark and Mrs. Brody have a psychic link. So these two kind of, which I think is the categorization for it being a flick. It's utter nonsense, but it kind of commits to the utter nonsense, and just kind of goes with it. So this isn't a film. This isn't even a movie. This is a flick. And in that category, yeah, there's certainly worse flicks that it could be. I haven't seen many, but I feel like The Room would be a flick, and I absolutely hate The Room. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, people love to talk about how awful Jaws: The Revenge is, and, you see it come up as one of the worst movies, et cetera, et cetera. I always struggle a little bit when people put that tag on films, especially ones that are, a pretty major film from a major studio. I mean, you're not digging too deep if you call a film like Jaws: The Revenge one of the worst movies ever made. There's a lot of worse movies. It's just, I think part of it is when, you think about where it came from. You look back at the original Jaws and you go, how did we ever get to this?
I think that puts in serious contention for being one of the worst films, because films that are made with a micro budget, by a bunch of amateurs just kind of figuring things out, and they have an excuse for being terrible. They're like people got together at the weekend and fitted this in where they could here and there, and that actor couldn't, they moved away, so they just replaced them halfway through and didn't, that kind of thing. Whereas Jaws, it's from a franchise where the first film is one of the best films ever made, by one of the best directors still working today. So it has that chance to be better. It should be so much better. I haven't looked into the budgets of these films, but actually, this one had a budget of $23 million. Back in '87, I feel like it could have done better. I don't know how much of that went to paying for Michael Caine, but
probably a lot of it. Yeah.
It had to pay for a house. Going by the infamous anecdote of he hasn't seen Jaws Revenge, but he has seen the house that it paid for. Yeah, so that's an element I was very much looking forward to. I was like, this is the one with Michael Caine in it. I'm a big fan of Michael Caine.
Well, you talk about Michael Caine. I mean, when I think of Jaws: The Revenge, I think, well, this came right in this time of the '80s where Michael Caine was literally in everything. I mean, it seemed like, just every other week there was a new movie coming out that Michael Caine was in. I mean, basically from about 1985 till 88, even 89 maybe. There's just Michael Caine's showing up in everything. And when you think about did I read that he was not able to show up and get his Oscar for Hannah and Her Sisters because he was filming this?
That's true. It's actually worse than that. It's not because he was filming this. It's because he was filming the reshoots for the ending.
Oh yes.
Which we're going to get into later on. But yeah, they released the ending in cinemas and it's not liked, so they reshoot it and make an infinitely worse ending. So. So we'll get there. But yeah, in '87 he had something called The Fourth Protocol and Surrender, all came out this year. But then the previous year he had 5 for the Whistleblower, Half Moon Street, Mona Lisa, Sweet Liberty, and Hannah and Her Sisters. I've only seen and heard of Hannah and Her Sisters of this list so far.
I've seen Sweet Liberty. I know that it's Alan Alda wrote and directed it, which, I mean, Alan Alda sometimes is a little annoying to me, but it's an interesting film. But.
The following year, he had Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, classic, and
my wife's favorite movie, Dirty Rotten Scoundrels.
No problem with that. And he played Sherlock Holmes in Without a Clue. He was in
underrated movie.
A Jack the Ripper TV series the following year. It all kicks off 5 years later with Muppet Christmas Carol. That's the pinnacle of his career. I think we can both agree.
Absolutely.
Yeah. The film that I certainly saw in first.
And speaking of that too, I had totally forgotten that there's a Christmas element to Jaws: The Revenge, because here I am watching it, right as the Christmas season is starting for us. I literally, it was Thanksgiving weekend here as we're recording this here in the U.S. And so we did all the Thanksgiving stuff, and then day after Thanksgiving, I woke up and I watched Jaws: The Revenge, and I was like, oh, I forgot it's a Christmas movie.
Yeah, this podcast is going to be released on December the 1st, which is when you're allowed to start watching Christmas films. It's perfect. That was not planned at all. I had no idea this was a Christmas film. I love it. And the next 2 weeks' shows are not Christmas films, so this is what you're getting, listeners. Jaws: Revenge is your Christmas film for now. Okay, so this isn't a good film. I think we can say off the bat, Jaws of Revenge isn't great, but I do appreciate that. This was 34 years ago. That took me too long to work out how long ago this was, because this film was the same age as me. So this was 34 years ago, but it starred a 50-year-old woman, a 50-year-old, which was rare. I think these days it's becoming less rare, but still not exactly common. But to have Lorraine Gary as the star of the film, being a grandmother, looking by today's standards older than 50, she...
As a 50-year-old, okay. That's as far as we'll go.
I was surprised by she was a star. I had no idea going in what this film was about at all. So the fact that she was back, having not been in Jaws 3, I was kind of thrilled that they took this chance and hey, let's have Ellen Brody as the lead. Let's see what happens there.
I remember when the movie came out and the commercials would be like, Lorraine Gary in Jaws: The Revenge, and I was like, who? Because not a household name. Okay, I mean, yeah, she's in the first Jaws, but I wouldn't have been able to tell you her name back in 1987. I just was surprised they were putting so much marketing